Ah, merci. Ouais, ça me fait penser en fait, quand je suis tombé dans l'apologétique, si on peut le dire comme ça. Je me rappelle encore, c'était suite à une discussion que j'avais eue avec quelqu'un qui était athée et qui a dit quelque chose et je ne savais pas comment répondre. Et à ce moment-là, on se sent vraiment très mal. On se dit, tiens, pourquoi j'ai pas toute cette connaissance pour répondre? Mais je comprends que les questions sont importantes. Et c'est là où quand j'ai lu Tactique, j'ai vu c'était le livre dont j'avais besoin. Mais voilà, pourquoi as-tu écrit ce livre, Greg?
Well, I wrote the book for people like you, actually, and in circumstances like you're facing. Um, I have been an interactive talk radio for over 30 years and spoken on more than 90 university campuses here and abroad. And that gives me an opportunity to engage people on these critical issues. And lots of times when Christians engage others, even if they know some apologetics, they know how to handle some of the issues they're facing, they they don't do a very good job at it. And the reason is because these are controversial issues and they're emotionally laden, influenced, and so it's easy to get into a fight.
Yeah.
It's not always a pretty picture, okay? And so being reflective myself on my own interactions with people, I I began to develop some ways to interact more effectively. I realized, for example, that using questions was a much more effective way to engage. All right, because it
Mhm.
encouraged dialogue. It was polite. I'm asking someone else something about their point of view, but it's also incredibly effective if used properly to, for lack of a better way of putting it, corner someone with the flaws or difficulties or problems with their own challenge or their own view. Now, I'm not looking to make people feel bad or look ridiculous or something, but you and I both know that many times people have ridiculous ideas that they hold for ridiculous reasons. That's actually what people think about Christians, especially in France. And so it's through the questions that I can set up the circumstances in which I can help them to see that and kind of lead them to that point. I'll give you a very simple example of this. Um, I have people I've talked to who are Mormons, and they are, and they think Mormonism is Christian, and they're Christians, and I'm a Christian. Why would you say that you're a Christian? Because it turns out that Mormonism is a very different religion. All the same vocabulary as classical Christianity, all different definitions and meanings. Okay. Very different religion. But because they believe in Jesus, they say they're Christian. And
Mhm.
so I ask, now that's a problem, isn't it? Now I know that's a problem. Just believing in Jesus doesn't make you a Christian. New Agers believe in Jesus. Jehovah's Witnesses believe in Jesus. Um, and so I could just tell them, well, believing in Jesus, some kind of Jesus, doesn't make you a Christian. You believe in the wrong Jesus. And the minute I say that, now I'm in an argument. Okay, I'm telling them they're wrong. But if instead, when they say, well, I'm a Christian because I believe in Jesus, I ask this question: are Muslims Christian? They're going to say, no, of course not. But Muslims believe in Jesus, which is true. There's more in the Quran about Jesus than about Muhammad. So there is a Jesus they believe in, but it's
Mhm.
not the real Jesus. And so what I do is in that case, I'm getting the Mormon to admit that simply believing in Jesus is not adequate to be a Christian. It depends on which Jesus, in a sense, that you believe in. So now that takes away a barrier for me and allows me to move into a more productive conversation with them about who they think Jesus is compared to classical Christianity. So notice there, I've got over what you might call speed bumps. I don't know if they have speed bumps in the roads in, in, um, in France, but I mean, in some countries, the speed bumps are bodies laying around. I don't know. But in any event, I just removed an obstacle. all right, for to get around to get me onto the issue of who is the real Jesus. But I've done it in a polite kind of fashion. Now, I have boxed them in a little bit, as you can tell, but I've done it in a legitimate fashion, in a proper way, without trying to make them look stupid, all right? Because I'm very friendly when I'm doing this. I'm just asking wait a minute, are Muslims Christian? No, well, they believe in Jesus. So just believing in Jesus doesn't make you a Christian, right? Depends on which Jesus you believe in. So now that's just one step in a conversation. So I've just used a simple example to show how that works. But when I realized, as I'm beginning to do these kinds of things in conversations on the radio or during a Q&A, after the lecture I might give at a university or something, I realized that I'm discovering some ways to get through the tough spots easier. I'm also discovering that many times when people raise an objection, there are ambiguities in the objection, and I'm going to need to clear those ambiguities up, because I want to get a clear idea of what the challenge is. For example, someone might say, well, the Bible has been changed. You can't trust the Bible, it's been changed. Now, I know what they're getting at, okay? It has to do with a more formal discipline of textual criticism, how the copying and recopying of manuscripts over time might corrupt those manuscripts, okay? Well, I know that process. But I'm telling you, most of the people who raise the objection really don't know anything about the process. They have heard the objection before. It's been enough to stop the Christians in their tracks, and it's been effective to shut the Christian up. Okay, that's all they know, most of them. Maybe they've read a book about it or some things or some articles, but I want them to explain more about what they mean. And that's why my first question in the game plan is, what do you mean by that? Or some variation. So you think the Bible's been changed? How has it been changed? Can you explain that to me? So now, boom, they challenge me. And right away, I'm just offering a clarification. I'm showing I'm interested in their view. I'm interested enough to get more detail, but I want them to give me more detail. So now we have a dialogue, right? And it's not fighting. We're not banging heads. But I realize when I ask a question for more information, which, by the way, any Christian can do. You don't need to know philosophy. You don't need to know apologetics. You don't need to know theology. You don't need to know anything. You just need to know to ask the question. You may not have an answer. That's okay. If you're new to this, all you want to do is get to the next step of the conversation. That's it. Or maybe that's all you can go to. That's all right. Because if you just ask for clarification, you're getting an education about their view. Okay? So, and that's good. That's beneficial maybe for the next time around or whatever. So there's no heavy burden on the Christian to go the distance, or to use an American metaphor here, to, swing for the fence, as we say. That means it's a baseball term where you're trying to hit a home run. You don't have to hit a home run.
I'll have fun translating.
I guess you guys play you guys play a form of football. You don't have to kick a goal with make a goal with every kick, I guess. That's okay. You can just move the ball down the field a little bit. That's okay. You don't have to worry about the goals right now. So because I'm aware of some things that I was doing that were more effective, and not only using the questions, but also being able to see some flaw in their view, and that's the different tactics. This allowed me to maneuver more effectively. Okay, and so I decided, well, I should teach some other people these things I'm learning. So I began to teach those things, and then why not just write a book about it? And so that's really was the genesis of the tactics book, is taking these concepts that I learned over time, little by little, that I was discovering were very, very effective in helping me navigate conversations, and then putting them in written form. And I'll tell you something, John, the most common response that I've gotten from people who read the book is that this book changed my life because it gave them, and I see you're nodding in agreement. It changed my life too. I understand that. It's very flattering when I hear that and humbling. Yet at the same time, I'm not surprised because the game plan and the general approach, the tactical approach, completely changes the dynamic, the interaction that we have with non-Christians to make it much more friendly, much more relaxed, much easier for especially the beginner, the new Christian, the one who doesn't have a lot of training, and much more effective. That's why I wrote the book.
That's very, very true what you just said about it's to say it's a life-changing book can be sound a bit like an overstatement. But I definitely think it's a mind-changing book.